I want to show you all the book that I'm reading and why, and the way that it's opened my eyes. Um, you'll forgive the tacky cover. This is a very important book that hasn't been given as much exposure as it should. In fact, it's been actively suppressed. You can see that the title that it's been given is Prostitutes Embedded in the Pay of the CIA. The original title was Bought Journalists, or Journalists for Hire. And it's called the reprise. This printing is called a reprise because the original printing was stifled. It was seen to it by the powers that shouldn't be that it not receive wide readership. This book is written by this man who's no longer with us, Udo Ulfkata. He was a writer, a journalist, ensconced in the German mainstream media. And so he wrote for several, I believe, major journals, major newspapers, beginning all the way back in the 80s, but going on for several decades. And this book is essentially a confession. Not only is it a confession on his part, but it's also his exposure of his colleagues. And the situation is, again, if its claims are to be believed, that the German media was essentially had essentially sold itself out completely to the CIA, to American intelligence, to American interests generally. And this went from, everything from creating stories essentially from scratch, just at the behest of some intelligence source. Some intelligence source says, we want this story to get out there because it's good for our interests, and they say yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, or jawohl, uh, Herr American. And it just was the case over and over and over and over again. And one gets the impression from this book that, in fact, the American occupation of Germany, which supposedly ended a few years after World War II, in fact, never truly ended. That it continues to this day. So it's a very interesting book. It's a very eye-opening book. It's one that I recommend. It's one that if we lived in a world that had integrity, where the authorities had integrity, where the academy had integrity, where the institutions generally, the institutions of our culture had integrity. If that were the case, they would assign this book in journalism school, and would-be journalists would read it to see what not to be. Don't become a paid shill is what it basically is, the lesson that's basically taught. Although the author, as I said, he confesses. This is listed as a confession from the profession. He confesses that he did it for years and years and years on end. But what this brings into sharper focus for me is the mystery of the Nord Stream pipeline, which I don't think is mysterious at all who did it. I think it's pretty clear that the United States, some branch of the United States, or specifically the CIA, was involved. Seymour Hersh exposed this, and Seymour Hersh, I think, is an eminently trustworthy source. Of course, the general media of the general mainstream media in the United States, which one suspects is just as intellectually and morally bankrupt as the one in Germany. Um, just as in bed with the authorities, just the mockingbird media, as it's sometimes called. They seemed especially incurious about the Nord Stream story. This pipeline that the Russians built, and the purpose of it was that so that fuel could be shipped to specifically to Germany, um, and to Western Europe generally. That pipeline was destroyed, and this was essentially was an attack on the infrastructure, an attack on the citizenry, an attack on the well-being of Germany. Now, it was done to try to hurt Russia, of course, because Russia had built the pipeline, and Russia stood to gain financially from the pipeline's existence. But what it also did was make it so that fuel would be much more expensive, uh, uh, and much harder to obtain for Germany. So the Russians built the pipeline, in conjunction with German authorities, and then the Americans go and specifically the CIA goes and knocks it down, destroys it, sees to it that it doesn't exist anymore, and the Germans say nothing. They don't say a thing. They don't say, "Excuse me, you just hurt us. Uh, you just attacked us. That was an attack on our infrastructure. That was fuel that we needed to heat our homes. Fuel we needed to cook our meals. Fuel we needed to run our cars with, to put it into the tank of our cars. Uh, that's an act of war." But it somehow went completely unremarked by the mainstream media of both the United States and Germany. Now, of course, there were and are people in Germany and in Europe generally who aren't down with all of this, and who did protest this, and who are protesting the usage by NATO of Ukraine as a proxy war, against as an excuse to fight Russia, um, on the behalf of again American interests, or the said to be American interests, American elite interests, American interests as defined by the elites of America who rule America, not as defined by the citizens of America, who really have no say. They have no say over foreign policy at all. But it helps. This book helps to put that all uh, in perspective, and it helps to make sense of why it happened, why it was allowed to happen, why things like that are allowed to happen. It seems that Germany, in particular, is still a vassal state, is still an occupied nation. And it's weird to have to see all of this happening in conjunction with the United States, and Western powers in general getting in bed with Nazi organizations in Ukraine. It's weird to see these two things taking place at once. The total domination of Germany, the dictation to Germany that you need to serve our interests, and the the absolutely appalling circumstance of the German media having sold out, hook, line, and sinker to the State Department, to the CIA, to NATO, to Western or American elite interests, to have that happening Uh, you know, so that would suggest that the time of Nazi Germany is long gone, or the time of Nazism is long gone, because it was the Nazi regime that was in power that got deposed when the American occupation took over. And yet, at the same time, we see the American occupation powers getting in bed with Ukraine organizations like Azov Battalion, Right Sector, and so forth. So it seems like a paradox there, and yet the deep state is Ukraine, and Ukraine is the deep state, as I've written on my Substack page. And this, as I said, kind of puts it all in perspective, kind of makes it all more understandable, and I recommend it highly. Thanks for watching.